Join me today as we discuss whether or not either Morgan Freeman's character or Keanu Reeves' character was correct in the end of the movie Chain Reaction. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name is Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about something from the end of the movie Chain Reaction. Now, I did a video on this movie a while ago. It's from the 90s. It's a sci-fi movie, and in it, minor spoilers for a movie that came out like 30 years ago here. Keanu Reeves is employed by the university, I think it's the University of Chicago. They're in Chicago, so I assume that's what university it is. And Morgan Freeman's character ultimately works for the CIA, but he's a front for like bankrolling these kind of things, so he could be working in connection with DARPA or something like that, but as far as the movie's concerned, he's CIA. And a professor there at the university with his helpers, his various PhD students, and Keanu Reeves' character have created a machine that can break, if I'm following correctly, what it does is it breaks water down into hydrogen and oxygen, and then you burn the hydrogen, and then that creates energy, because because the way we generate power is essentially we boil water and use the steam to turn turbines. So by burning hydrogen, of course, you're just creating more water, because to burn something chemically means to add oxygen to it, and hydrogen and oxygen together are water. So that's why anytime you watch one of the big rocket liftoffs there for NASA, those giant clouds you see, that's not smoke, that's water vapor from the two parts of the rocket fuel combining and forming water. So it does so in such a way that the energy that it is putting out is greater than the energy that it's requiring to power the laser and all the other parts. Like, it's not super explained exactly how the thing works. That's not really important to the plot. So, some things happen, some people are killed, and essentially the CIA folks think they have everything they need to make the machine work, but they're missing something critical that Keanu Reeves knows. It has to do with one of the pieces of it, some frequency it emits, and he's the only one that had it, didn't write it down yet, because he literally just made the part functional, and so hadn't had a chance to back up all of his data yet. So, towards the end of the movie, they're at another facility that the CIA owns, and they're trying to recreate the device, and they've got a few people hostage, and there's been a manhunt on for Keanu Reeves' character and Rachel Weisz's character, because they're supposedly wanted in connection with this massive explosion that happens towards the beginning of the movie, and then a cop gets killed along the way, and so they want in connection with that too. And so at the end of the movie, Keanu Reeves steps forward and is like, "Hey, I fixed your machine, and we had a deal. I fixed the machine, and you let us go." Hang on just a second here, folks. Apologize. Had a bit of a glare there. So, that's part of the video now. You probably can't see me too well. So anyway, he comes forward with the fix. He fixes the machine. But he has also uploaded all the schematics so that he basically has to hit 2 or 3 buttons on the keyboard, and they're going to start being transferred, faxed, emailed, everything out to other people. And so there's a philosophical moment arrives in the movie where Morgan Freeman tells him that the world can't handle this technology right now. Now, mind you, this is a movie from the 90s. And he says point blank, we're living on a planet that's addicted to petroleum. And if you put something like this just out there, stock markets will crash overnight. People, economies will collapse, and ultimately it'll lead to war and devastation. It's a thing that's going to have to be like slowly dripped out. And Keanu Reeves argues that no, the world can absorb it now, because the other part is Morgan Freeman basically says that things are already speeding up too fast and we can barely hold on as it is. And again, this was in the 90s. Now, the reason I thought about all this is because the finale of Landman was on the other night, and Billy Bob Thornton's character, kind of spelled out a similar thing to another character, that the world runs on petroleum. Like, you can't just stop it. And his comment was actually the effect of, our grandparents built a world that runs on this stuff, and we got to keep finding it or the world stops. And so it's a similar kind of thought process here. And so I got to thinking about the movie, and it's one of those, even at the time, kind of thought about it. So who's right here? On the one hand, the part of me that understands that, a lot of things are done because of the fact that oil basically powers everything, that are very unsavory, and I'd prefer not happen. So replacing oil would be great. However, so in that respect, I lean towards Keanu Reeves' take on things. But now, a couple decades older me also understands that, the world can only take so many, shocks, so many, just absolute upending overnight kind of events. And that would most definitely be one. A machine that can create more energy than it takes in and is powered by water, the most abundant liquid on the entire planet. Yeah, that's going to make some waves. No pun intended with the whole water thing. So I can sympathize with Morgan Freeman's position. Now, I think, though, where it falls apart is that most electricity isn't generated from burning oil. It's from burning coal. And so whenever he talks about stock markets collapsing and everything, I don't think the use of oil is going to take a huge hit at first. Definitely not like an overnight kind of thing. Because even if, it'll take years to upscale this technology to make it viable to begin to replace coal-fired power plants and things like that. Plus, you receive all kinds of industry pushback. And other countries will adopt it immediately because he was sending it everywhere, so everyone could get a hold of it. But it'll take a while. It'll take years to make it so it can actually generate electricity on a mass scale, and then to begin to replace huge chunks of the power grid. Plus, you're also going to have to build other infrastructure, to pipe water to it, and things like that, which might require desalination plants, because it probably requires fresh water, if I had to guess. So, there'll be several steps to get there. And in the meantime, people still going to be driving their cars, we're still going to need oil. Still going to need, for the billion other things that Billy Bob Thornton mentioned in Landman that petroleum goes into. So I don't think it would be the severe system shock in that respect. So I don't think it would necessarily lead to war on that front. Now, industries like the coal industry, they're going to take a hit. The nuclear industry, maybe, but in most countries there isn't much of a nuclear industry. So, like I said, though, I think the oil is going to keep on flowing, especially if certain things happen. Like, for instance, let's say that type of power became readily available. Let's say it's, let's say 10 years after this, all of a sudden we're starting to build these power plants. And by us, I mean the world, not just America, not just the West. Okay, well, electricity prices will probably drop because you're no longer having to mine coal and transport it. It's a dangerous thing to transport. You don't have the after effects. And a lot of other things will stop. Now, you will have an economic hit to certain green sectors of energy, because if you're doing this, then we don't need windmills and we don't need solar panels. Now, I would encourage those technologies to continue to develop in case we can still use them too, because there might be some unforeseen consequence as far as the water part. But overall, the price of electricity should drop. Now, once the price of electricity drops, and once power plants are no longer emitting all kinds of toxic gases, you can build more of them. And if you can build more of them, then all of a sudden electricity becomes abundant. And then other things become possible. The high power output that factories need, for instance. These things become more viable, which will increase the potential wealth of the countries that involve, that do these things. And certain other industries become viable, and so you'll have these things happen, which will increase the relative wealth of these nations. Plus, the people themselves will have more money in their pocket because they're not paying as much for their utilities. So, what are they going to do with the money, though? Most people aren't going to save it. They're going to buy a bigger house. They're going to buy a car or more cars. Okay, well, the electric cars are still going to have the issues they're going to have. So most of the cars sold are going to be gas-powered cars. So if anything, fuel usage might actually increase. So you're going to have that. Well, you also need petroleum for road surfacing. With increased cars, going to be increased traffic. Roads are going to break down faster. You're going to have to resurface them faster. You're going to need it. It's involved in shingles for roofs. And people are buying more houses. They're going to build more houses. And, people are going to have money to replace shingles, things like that. So petroleum usage might actually increase with something like that, because you're taking economic pressure away from that sector. And also, certain countries are going to lose. If petroleum usage increases, they won't lose global political power. So I don't think it would create the instability people think it would. Now, it will hurt certain other sectors, like the natural gas sector, for instance. But it'll be a while before that'll be phased out. Coal will be phased out first, because, in my opinion, because coal has more drawbacks than natural gas does. And natural gas, well, if you're exploring for oil, as a byproduct, you're exploring for natural gas anyway. So, ultimately, I guess my point is, while I can appreciate Morgan Freeman's standpoint now that I'm older, as far as like, you really don't want to rock the boat with a lot of things in the world. Like, stability is actually a rare thing in life and in human history and in dealing with creatures such as ourselves. So the fact that, things are relatively stable is unusual, and we don't want to rock that boat if we don't have to. So I can appreciate his stance. I just think that the nightmare scenario he envisioned wouldn't actually happen, because I don't think it'd lead to this sudden drop off of petroleum usage. Other fossil fuels eventually, yes, coal, probably natural gas, and maybe even nuclear. Although nuclear would still have its uses too, because of like ships and things like that. Because we don't know, like with this, since it's a fictional technology, we don't know what it would take to scale it down to fit aboard a nuclear powered submarine or aircraft carrier or something. So that might not be feasible. It might have to stick with nuclear. And anything space related is probably going to be nuclear, because you're not going to want to haul a bunch of water with you because of weight. It's way easier to haul a few magic rocks that, whenever they get close to each other, start getting really hot. Yeah, that's the basics of nuclear power, for those of you that don't understand that reference. It's considerably more complicated than that, but that's essentially what it is. So I think Keanu Reeves is ultimately the one who's right, that the world could deal with it. And especially in the 90s, because the world was at relative peace because of the end of the Cold War. We had only had Iraq War version 1.0, so we hadn't had just the complete collapse of things in the Middle East as far as several governments and wars and everything. So I think the world was in a generally stable place, and I don't think this would have seriously rocked the boat. I don't think it would have stopped any of the calamities that have happened since then. It's my opinion, but yeah, I think overall Keanu Reeves is the one that's right here. Again, I can appreciate Morgan Freeman's position. I just don't think the scenario he outlines would have actually happened. If you really think it through. So, anyway, that's just my opinion on it. Let me know what you folks think, because that's the real reason for all this, is get some kind of discussion going here. Could the world then or now survive if tomorrow they announce, hey, here's a device, and it gets spread everywhere across the internet, that here's a device that is powered by water that will basically give you limitless, cheap energy. And, it's a stand-in for fusion power is what it is. Because that's what fusion power promises to do. We'll have that in 30 years. I've heard that for the last 30 years. So, maybe one day. I think we actually will ultimately harness that somehow, but I think it's farther down the road. Or it's right around the corner. I don't think it's 30 years. I think it's either we're one breakthrough away, or it's just simply beyond our science at the moment to do it, and it's going to be for a while. I think that technology is going to be one of those kind of things. So that's just my personal opinion on the matter. I haven't super read up on the topic, but I do know some videos I saw about 6 months ago to a year ago said we did actually make some legitimate breakthroughs in it. Not like some of the ones in the past where it's oh, this is promising. No, these were legitimate, hey, this is real stepping stones to actually achieving something here kind of breakthroughs. Couldn't tell you what they were, though. I really need to go back and rewatch those. So anyway, done sidetracking. Let's get back to phasing out here. So like I said, let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you have an opinion on the matter? Hopefully you do. Any other quandaries from movies, like who was right kind of stuff you want to talk about? Have you not seen the movie Chain Reaction? If you haven't, you should check it out. It's a good movie. A lot of well-known stars in it. The two I mentioned, Rachel Weisz, Brian Cox. Oh, yeah, there's other people. Trust me, I'm just drawing a blank. Fred Ward is in it, and several others. Like I said, I would have by now already posted the link, but probably down in the description too of my review for the movie, and I talked about who all is in it, the plot and everything. So anyway, like I said, hit me up down in the comments. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Commenting and sharing are the things that help us grow the channel and are always appreciated. But other than that, I'm going to get going here, so I'll be seeing you folks later.